is causing a lack of information to filter through to those businesses that are generally Asian operated. And the misconception really that some of the loans and the grants, etc., that are available to businesses during this period perhaps need to be paid back. And I think there's a myth that perhaps they're not eligible to claim certain funding or any kind of assistance, grants, etc., that they might potentially have access to. So the ABCC launched a campaign really to address these barriers and to ensure that Asian businesses have all the information they need. So today I'm here just to talk more about that.
Okay, if I could ask Andy how all that's funded. Dal, you might probably want to say something in Punjabi after Andy's done his contribution on this. Andy, so how is this business is funded, and how best people can attract funding to themselves?
Okay, well, very nice to be on Sikh Channel again this afternoon. So the first thing to say is obviously most of the funding for businesses through the pandemic has come directly from government. So whether it be the discretionary grants or whether it actually be the furlough support to pay the wages of employees, that has actually been national government who have paid that. But the point that I wanted to draw out this afternoon to support the work that Dal has described at the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce is obviously what businesses are entitled to needed to be explained to them. And Dal has stepped forward to do a brilliant job on that. And so the combined authority, which I lead, put, I think, half of the money for supporting the work of translating and distributing the information out to businesses who, as Dal said, the first language might not be English. So to make sure that everybody, every business, irrespective of which community they are in, make sure they understand what they were entitled to.
Right, Dal, you want to say something in Punjabi before we go to the next point?
Yeah, sure. I think for those that are watching, sanu pata hega da corona jira hega ya o dur nahi gaya. So jina business, jina loka nu koi madad chahidi a, jina nu koi salah chahidi a, jina nu haje hun pata nahi kidda survive karna, kidda asi operate karna during this period, ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਲਾਹ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਬੈਰੀਅਰ ਕੋਈ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਿਮੂਵ ਕਰ ਦੇਣਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਉਰਦੂ ਬੰਗਾਲੀ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਐਕਸਪਰਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਦਾ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਜਾਂ ਕੁਛ ਲੀਗਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਕੁਛ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੁੱਛ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਜੇ it doesn't matter ਜਿਹੜੀ business ਤੇਰੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ whether it's shops or local manufacturing, as I said, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਦਦ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਸਾਰਾ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਪੁੱਛ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਸਲਾਹ ਲੈਣੀ ਆ so I would encourage you all to do that, please.
Okay, when people want to contact you or they're in difficulty, their businesses are in difficulty, or they probably get shut down because of the coronavirus, where do they contact you? How do they contact Andy's office or your office?
The best thing to do is to contact the ABCC directly. There is a hotline number which is I can read it out, you can put it on your screen. It's 0121 274 3280. A member of our ABCC team will answer your call. They will respond to you in any language that suits you. As I mentioned, it could be English, Urdu, Punjabi, Bengali. We are trying to ensure that we speak to people in all languages because we know that is one of the biggest barriers. And no question is a silly question at this stage. I think, we are in a position where many businesses and business owners feel that they are, in such a situation that we've never experienced before. On ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਆ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੁਣ spending ਘਟ ਗਈ ਆ lockdown ਵੀ ਹੁਣ government ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ which basically we need to stay at home, we need to do our part to ensure that the virus is not spreading, and so for that reason the best thing to do is to call in, go to the Asian Business of Chamber website or contact us on the number that we've provided.
Andy, how would the business be protected? There's charities out there like gurdwaras because people can't go into to worship because they, as you know, they offer the money in there. That's how gurdwaras are run. How is the furlough scheme being extended, or how is this protected? There's two questions
Yeah.
here for you.
So I think the important point to come out of this is there is lots of support for businesses out there, but it's about making sure businesses understand just what is there. So just give you two examples of that. The lockdown is coming, of course, on Thursday. And what the government has said is the furlough scheme that had been due to end at the end of October is now extended through November. So that support is there and more of it. And then the second thing, there will be businesses in the hospitality sector, a lot of restaurants and places selling bars, pubs. And they too have just been, as we've been in tier 2 in Birmingham, Solihull, Sandwell, Walsall and Wolverhampton up until the beginning of last week, that they will be getting interim support for the month of October. And I was particularly pleased that I was able to navigate that and get that from the Chancellor, because when we went into tier 2, that support wasn't there. So it's a classic example of the funding support is there, and the ABCC will help people understand exactly what there is.
Okay, that's very good. Dal, this initiative you have brought to businesses through the chamber, and what else kind of or support you will provide from your chamber?
Well, I think first of all is to demonstrate care. There are many businesses out there that perhaps feel that they don't have the support or there's a lack of support, and it's through the barriers that I've already mentioned. So the support is really any type of legal support that an organisation might be looking for, whether it's financial support. We've talked that might have been available, the loan schemes, etc. Those have evolved slightly, but the best thing to do now is to contact the chamber and find out about what is available to you now, because this is evolving all the time. And then there's also legal assistance, information about the furlough scheme. If you've got issues with potentially the way your business is operating and what you do for employees, all of that kind of information is available to you. Or whether it's just about understanding how you might be able to reach more of an audience, or attract audiences, given that actually the amount of spending is reducing. So we're able to provide any kind of pastoral or kind of business type support for any business that is seeking it.
Andy, on the earlier you said about the businesses, there's fear of redundancies. Obviously, some businesses probably just hanging on by the thread, and they could go to the wall, or they can survive. I know you said the furlough scheme is extended for the November period because it was supposed to end in October. So if there's fear of redundancies, is there any way these people can go to or say, we need help urgently? I know what Dal is saying, but is there something specific in this area?
Well, of course, the furlough is designed to help people cover the costs of their pay. That's very clear. And also, so are the business grants supposed to ease that. And the fact that they were increased for tier 2 and then are there now for the lockdown period, that's there. The other thing I would say as well, though, is that you can still apply for a loan. So this was brought in at the beginning of the original lockdown. It was due to end, but actually the period for applying for a loan has been extended. So if you're running a business, you just think, the cash flow is really, really bad. And I know there's cash and there's profitability and one doesn't solve the other. But if you do want to apply for a loan, that is still there. And probably the best place to go there is to your clearing bank. They're still open taking those applications if you're in exactly the position that you describe. But you ultimately need to will have to think about how am I going to try to increase my sales or reduce my costs? And that's where you might want the sort of advice, just not the financial support, but the advice that the Chamber of Commerce is talking about, or indeed one of the growth hubs, for example. So there are lots of places that can give businesses that advice as to how to navigate, what I know is an absolutely horrid situation at the moment, and it's causing a lot of distress for a lot of businesses. But those different advisors are also there available.
Before I go to Dal, there's one point I also want to make. There's a lot of ethnic students probably come overseas who are here. The universities are not going to be open. Is there anything available for those students at all?
I don't really understand your question. To do what do you mean?
You know, overseas students are here, for instance,
Yes.
right? And they can't get the money from there. There's a coronavirus and there's a communication problems. And you know, I know the universities are open. Is there anything for them, or can they work part time? You know, if that's availability. I know this is a bit of a far fetched question, but we do have people who phone us to say, you know, we furlough. You're doing a lot of programs. Is there anything?
Yeah. So the answer is, of course, they can work, but it is probably tricky to get part-time work. Students can work, of course, but it's tricky to get part-time work at the moment. That a lot of the jobs that would normally be available aren't. So particularly for students, the student unions, welfare officers are absolutely on top of this particular issue. So if any student is watching this, that's immediately where I would refer them to, into their student union, to talk about the particular support there is at the moment.
Thank you for that. Are you anything else available, like you know, in the digital world, or anything else you do from the business for the businesses? You know, from the Chamber of Commerce, is there anything else you will help them with? Not only with the furlough schemes or anything else. What else is available?
Indeed. There is obviously there's the helpline that I mentioned. So there's a multilingual advisor that can answer the calls and obviously speak to relevant people in the language that they prefer. There is also social media material and downloadable information, and that is all published in various languages. So you will be able to get information about the campaign itself in Punjabi, Bangladeshi, in Bengali, in Urdu, for example. So we've already done a number of campaigns where we've attempted to push out that information to people that are to their primary mother tongue, and so there's that kind of information available. All of the summary and briefing papers can be downloadable and can be taken offline. So that's the kind of support that wraps around all of this. But the key to all of this is that businesses should seek support, call the number, and get their questions answered in the first instance.
Andy,
And
we're
I'm
now
going to be
into. Go on, go on,
I'm going to be cheeky and mention another aspect which doesn't quite answer your question,
go
but I
on.
think is very relevant to viewers today. Because, of course, this is the
Yeah.
second day of the National Kickstart Scheme, which is about supporting young people and businesses stepping forward to take young people on. But the critical thing for businesses to understand, it is at no cost to them. All the costs are paid for by central government, but you need to register to say, I can take a young Kickstarter on. It may be somebody who, in years to come, they'll look back and they might end up running the company. You never know, but you will have given them that first break. So if you want and you think you might be able to give somebody a new start in life at this very difficult time, just go onto the Combined Authority website or the government website and search Kickstart, and you can make a brilliant contribution to our young people who, of course, are so affected by this pandemic as well.
Thanks for that. What I was going to say was, I know we're not very far away now from the lockup. It's a second wave, and we thought the first wave we was gone away, everything going to be all okay, but it's certainly not. And I think it's an extreme measure by the Prime Minister to have another second lockdown. What would you like to say to people? I know I would like to ask you again, the places of worship. And as you know, a lot of gurdwaras in the West Midlands, and people can't go. There's weddings and there's usual day-to-day going to the gurdwaras. How that can be helped, and what else message would you like to go give our viewers, which is going to be locked down for the next 4 weeks?
Okay, I think there's two things, a general message, then a very practical point. So the general message would be, nobody would have wished to have seen this second lockdown, obviously. We all understand it's going to be incredibly disruptive for so many families and individuals in all sorts of ways, and not going to their place of worship, to the Gurdwara, will obviously be one of those things. But if you look at the data about the threat to our hospitals, it is very clear. The hospitals were coming under incredible pressure, and this decision did need to be taken. The critical thing is, the message would be, we've all got to follow it as rigorously as we can, because if we all come together, take our share of responsibility as a citizen, the quicker the lockdown will be finished and the better we will come out of it. and the more chance we've got of then a sustainable recovery. So I know it's hard, but that's what we've got to ask of every individual. If you come actually to the Gurdwaras, obviously they're not open for major worship, but all places of worship are open just for individual reflection. That is allowed, not congregational worship. And I know that lots of the things that Gurdwaras usually do have been stopped, but full credit, and a lot of the leaders of your community have made this very clear. They're trying to continue those events, whether it be online. And so I hope that people can still feel that connection individually. They're out in the communities, and I'm sure senior leaders are there. So if there's anyone who is really feeling as they are disconnected through this, they should still try to reach out to the individuals leading their community, because brilliant arrangements have been put in place for continuing the spirit of worship, even though it can't be done in the same way.
Dan, thank you. Your business is obviously going to be suffering the same way. People going into the shops, I mean, small businesses on a high street and all that kind of business. And how would you like to address them to say, if there's essential shops going to be open and non-essential shops not going to open? I know you've addressed the money issue, the furlough, or whatever they need to do, they can do. How would you like to advise them, the small businesses, how to go about and people coming into them? I know Andy just said, people must take responsibility, because they haven't taken the responsibility, and the large gatherings have caused this second wave and the second lockdown.
Yeah, so I guess, to reiterate what Andy said, really, in terms of small businesses that remain open, obviously to follow the protocol, to ensure that those entering their premises are also following the protocol. The messages that have come through from central government around, the wearing of masks, washing of hands, maintaining space, all of those things are really important, and that applies to everybody, regardless of whether you are going into a business or you're going into a shop, for example, a public place. So to reiterate, really, in Punjabi, in terms of what Andy has said, stay safe, because ਸਾਡੇ ਲੋਕ, we need to ensure that our communities are safe. ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਐਡਵਾਈਸ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਫੋਲੋ ਕਰੋ। ਤਾਂ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਲਾਹ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕੋਈ, if you need advice, please call our helpline. The advice is free advice here. ਤੁਸੀਂ phone ਕਰਕੇ ਪੁੱਛ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ. You might get something out of it in terms of, access to funding, for example. On ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗ ਆ, ਨਿਆਣੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, ਹਨਾ, please be careful. Coronavirus ਹਜੇ ਗਈ ਨਹੀਂ. It's still here. It's still in and around our communities. And so it's very important that we take all of the necessary precautions. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, and everybody else, mask ਪਾ ਕੇ ਜਾਇਆ ਕਰੋ, ਤਾਂ ਹੱਥ ਵੀ ਧੋਇਆ ਕਰੋ. And also, stay away from large gatherings. ਹੁਣ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ big gatherings ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ, ਪਰ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਾ, ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ space ਧਿਆਨ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਓ, just making sure that you're taking care of yourself and those around you.
Right, that's very good, Darroch. Andy, we are coming close to our program, and the month in November is going to be locked down as previous. Maybe some bits that people, like the schools are still open, university is still open, and other places where people can go. But you think that the people have not obeyed the rules before, and we've gone into the second wave, and this time we do not want the third wave. We want everybody to enjoy their Christmas. What do you say?
That you're right. That let's be clear though, the huge majority of people across the West Midlands have done exactly what's been asked of them. And, we are asking people again to do something. So thank you for what you've done already, and thank you for what you will do. There are a small minority who haven't followed the rules. And as both you and Darroch said, actually, that has led to some of the transmission of the virus. But everyone, therefore, has got to follow. And we've also, of course, got to make sure, and the pressure's on the government here as well, we've got to make sure that when this lockdown finishes in December, We then do have a really good test, track and trace system so that we can keep the levels of the virus low if we come out with low levels. So there's a personal responsibility, but there's also a national responsibility as well. And let's hope that by bringing those two things together, that we can enjoy the festivities at the end of the year.
Right, Dal, in the last minute, if you want to say the number again, where can people contact you, and your message, please?
Sure. So, yes, so to get in touch specifically for those businesses that want to receive support, please call 0121 274 3280. It will be answered by somebody within the chamber who can speak to you in any language. We'll make sure that we can speak to you in the language that suits you. And, just a general message to all of those that are watching, viewers and listeners, to ensure that you stay safe. Really do take care of yourselves and do everything you can to stop the virus from spreading in the same way that Andy has already said.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you very much, Dal, for coming on to the Sikh channel and giving us the future message so we can work through this and everybody can be safe. Thank you very much coming onto the show today.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much.
ਪਿਆਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕੋ, ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਅਰ ਸੀ ਐਂਡੀ ਵੈਸਟ ਮਿਡਲੈਂਡ ਦਾ, ਉਹ ਤੇ ਦਲਰੋਚ ਚੈਂਬਰ ਆਫ ਕਾਮਰਸ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਆਏ ਸੀ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਜੋ ਕਰੋਨਾ ਦੀ ਮਹਾਮਾਰੀ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਬਚਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਉਹਦੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਥਰੂ ਆਪਾਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਚ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਖਤਮ ਹੈ। ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਗਲਤੀ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਹੋਵੇ ਤੇ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਮਾਫ ਕਰਨਾ, ਤੇ ਆਓ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਆਗਿਆ। ਅਗਲੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਵਾਂਗਾ। ਵਿਦਾਇਗੀ ਦੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਬੁਲਾਓ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਘੱਲੂਘਾਰਾ ਤੀਸਰਾ 30 ਸਾਲ ਉਸ ਦੁਖਾਂਤ ਨੂੰ ਬੀਤ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਨੇ। ਹੋਲੋਕਾਸਟ 84, ਜੈਨੋਸਾਈਡ 84, ਘੱਲੂਘਾਰਾ ਜਾਂ ਨਸਲਕੁਸ਼ੀ। ਅਤੇ ਆ 30 ਸਾਲ ਬੀਤਣ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਵੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਇਨਸਾਫ, ਜਸਟਿਸ ਨਾ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਮਿਲਣ ਦੀ ਆਸ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿਸ ਰਹੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਪਾਸਿਓਂ ਵੀ। ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਦੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਮਹਾਨ ਸ਼ਖਸੀਅਤ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਸੰਤਾਪ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਿੰਡੇ ਤੇ ਹਟਾਇਆ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਬੀਤੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਬੀਤੀ, ਜੂਨ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਨਵੰਬਰ ਤੱਕ ਅਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਤੱਕ ਉਹ ਜਸਟਿਸ ਲਈ, ਆਪਣੇ ਹੱਕਾਂ ਲਈ, ਇਨਸਾਫ ਲਈ ਲੜ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਹਾਲੇ ਤੱਕ ਕਿਸੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਇਨਸਾਫ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ। ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ